Today we're going to find out how tires are made. For that, we came to a factory here in Santo André, close to São Paulo, where more than 20,000 tires are produced every day. And I'm already letting you know that if you think a tire is just a big chunk of rubber, you're mistaken. There are dozens of parts that need to be put together to make something like this. Shall we take a look? We managed to get a perfect tire cross-section here. You'll see that it's much more high-tech than it looks. The process can start up to 3 years before the launch. Each part is designed for the specific car the tire will be used on, with many parts made from different materials and rubbers. So everything works properly. I'll explain from the outside in, okay? The part that touches the ground is called the tread. It's mainly made of rubber, and this is where the tire's footprint pattern comes in, or in English, footprint. Footprint. This part ensures the tire grips the road, especially if it's wet. The part that brings everything together is the body ply, which we can identify here by the steel line running through the entire tire. On the innermost part, we have several steel wires that form the bead. It's very important to provide a lot of strength to this inner part and ensure that the tire doesn't come off the wheel. And finally, on the inside, we have the inner liner, which is a rubber layer that ensures sealing. In the past, tires had inner tubes. Today, the more modern ones don't have them anymore. It's this rubber layer that acts as the inner tube. And look, I'm really simplifying things here. There are a number of other parts that are super important, like the sidewall of the tire, which needs to be very tough for situations like when you scrape against the curb. The main raw material for tires is rubber. This here is natural rubber, the one that comes from latex, from the rubber tree. It even has a very different smell. But synthetic rubber is also used in tires, which comes from petroleum. The ratio of the two depends on the desired material. Additionally, tire rubber contains several additives. One of the main ones is carbon black. It's derived from petroleum and gives more strength to the rubber. That's why tires are black. Without carbon black, they could be a different color. Another important ingredient is silica. It's one of the main components of sand. Silica gives the tire more rolling resistance. This will make the car consume less fuel, for example. Now, a very important ingredient is being added: sulfur. It's what greatly increases the resistance of natural rubber. Normally, rubber is sticky. It breaks easily. Sulfur will modify this property. It's being mixed in now, but it will only act a little later, in a process called vulcanization. All this raw material will go into a giant blender called Boravê. It will chop and heat all of it. In the next step, this will be thrown between two huge cylinders. And the final product will be this rubber sheet called a master batch. And now this rubber sheet, the sulfur, and some more additives will go back into that giant blender. Everything will be mixed to form a new rubber sheet. And this is an internal raw material that will be used in the tire manufacturing process. The consistency of this intermediate rubber here is really weird. It makes you want to take a bite. These rubber sheets will follow several paths inside the factory. For example, it will be heated and then pressed in a calendar to form the tire's airtight layer, the inner liner, that thin layer that works like the old inner tube. The width of this strip here depends on the tire that's going to be produced. You can see that it's being cut over there in the corner and the rest goes up. This will be melted down and turned back into this rubber again. Look at this giant wire coil. It's used to produce the bead. That's that steel structure that goes inside the tire and fits onto the wheel. The machine will wind it up and then mix it with rubber. Look at how it turns out. One of the coolest processes you'll see in this video is the creation of the steel belt layer, the slightly more inner part of the tire that already has steel wires. In fact, they're coming out of these giant spools right here. Look how beautiful that is. These wires are all going to be organized. You can see that everything is lined up really neatly here. Next, they're also going to go into a calendar. In this machine, that rubber sheet we saw earlier will go in already hot and will form a kind of sandwich. It will be the bread. And the steel will be the filling. Here you can already see the material coming out ready, nice and hot. This material still needs to be cooled down, and then it will be rolled up together with a nylon sheet. You must do it this way because without the fabric, the rubber might stick together. And we've reached the processes that consume the most rubber, which is making the tread, the part of the tire that touches the ground. They're heating and mixing those sheets we saw being produced. Next, they'll go into a triple extruder. It works like a mechanical syringe. It injects 3 different materials. All of this will be pressed and molded into a single output. And here we can already see, once again, the component coming out nice and hot from the machine. I managed to grab a little piece here. It's cool that at this stage it's still really sticky. And these lines, they told me that the car manufacturers request them. So if you look at a brand new car tire, you'll probably see some colored line like this one. I only showed the main parts, but a tire can have up to 30 different components. Everything's ready, time to assemble. One cool thing you notice is that the rubber is extremely sticky, so when you press one against the other, it already sticks. Some of these materials also get additives to help them stick better, a kind of glue, which is important now. Assembly is fully automated and handled by robots, and it starts from the inside out. The first piece added is the stunk, the inner liner, and the rest is placed around it so that the tire becomes rigid and can receive the other parts. It will be inflated. Then it gets the tread, the part that touches the ground. And then it's rolled. There are some little wheels that press down hard so the rubber sticks. What's cool to see here is that all this happens at the same time. So we have to watch for several minutes to understand what the machine is doing. But hold on, because after all that, the tire still isn't ready yet. This here's the green tire. If you touch it, you'll notice it's still soft, sticky. It has this weird stuff on the side, and it doesn't have the tire grooves. That's right, it still needs to go through the main chemical reaction in tire manufacturing, which is vulcanization. That's when the sulfur will take effect. What happens is that rubber molecules are really long, and normally they slide past each other. When you add sulfur and heat it up to a high temperature, some bonds are created between the molecules, and then the rubber becomes firmer and more elastic. The vulcanization is going to happen inside this press. On the outside, you can see that there's a mold that's already in the shape of the tire's grooves. Inside, there's a bladder that will inflate with super hot water, and with the mold, that's where vulcanization happens, at a very high temperature. So both the bladder and the mold are very hot. For larger tires like this one here, this process can take hours. When I say bladder, it sounds like it's something soft and squishy, but it's not. This here's the bladder. It looks like another tire. Look at this beauty. Now it's ready. The tire is done. And one thing everyone likes to see on a new tire are these little hairs. Where do they come from? When the green tire enters vulcanization, there are some little channels that let the air out as the rubber takes shape. A bit of rubber also gets into these little channels, and that's what forms the little hairs. The little hair isn't placed there intentionally. It's just a result of the tire manufacturing process. In fact, people said that there are countries that don't really like the little hairs on new tires, but the work doesn't stop there. The tires still go through a visual inspection, where they take the opportunity to remove any excess rubber left behind. Then, all of them will still go through an X-ray machine. You can see the metal structure, the joints between rubber parts, and the tires go through a machine that checks mass distribution to ensure no part is heavier, which could cause imbalance in the car. There are a series of other tests that are done on a sampling basis. Here, for example, the tire keeps spinning for days, under maximum load, until it bursts, so they can understand where it will break. And besides that, in the countryside of São Paulo, they have a track to test the tire in real-life conditions.
Yo, the new MC, you got the remix. Keep it on repeat, just let the beat kick. Everywhere you go, you bring the roof.
Be honest, you didn't imagine you needed so much stuff to make a tire. I think this deserves a thumbs up, huh?